Decca Records. Sounds like they decked out on missing the... I don't know where I was going with that. Every worst decision in history in 28 minutes. Your worst decision will be not subbing in the next 30 seconds. I'm not going to tell you what happens in the next 30 seconds, all right? But something about to happen. And it's for YouTube and Twitch. I warned you, bro. I'm too broke. Think about the hustling, bro. Think about the hustle you could make by subbing to me. If anything, if you hustle right now to get bread to sub to me, then you have more bread for extra amenities for different things you want to do later on. All right, let's see this video, though.
Alexander the Great's troops refusing to go further. It's 323 BC, and you're part of Alexander the Great's army, marching and fighting for years.
Damn, bro. Why do they have such golden names in history? Alexander the Great? Caesar Salad? No. Great Caesar? Alex the Caesar? Oh my God, what's his name? It's Julius Caesar.
Years across foreign lands. You've seen Alexander conquer everything in his path, and now you're on the edge of India. But just as you're about to push further into uncharted territory, you and your friends say, "Enough is enough, Alex. We're not going any further." At first glance, refusing to go further might seem like a reasonable decision.
I don't even know anything. This is history.
Of miles away from home, and they'd been fighting for nearly a decade, missing their wives back home, and failing to attend years of their children's birthday parties.
Damn.
They may have been tired, but deciding to turn back was a mistake. Alexander was at the peak of his power, with momentum on his side. He had a chance to expand the Macedonian Empire to India and the rest of...
What happened to people owning empires? Like, what's the closest empire right now? Is it America? Yo, America be owning... I didn't even know. Like, I really didn't even know Puerto Rico was owned by America for the longest. It changed to soft power. Yeah, it's not the same. They used to literally, bro, they used to like invade people back in the day, or like they would literally like reign on lands. Like it would be one leader leading and then the other one, bro. I don't want that back because then that'll cause war.
Asia. This would have solidified Alexander's legacy as the Michael Jordan of conquerors, the undisputed GOAT. By refusing to continue, the troops essentially stopped what could have been the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Moreover, turning back sent a message that even Alexander had limits. His enemies realized he wasn't an unstoppable demigod hell-bent on conquering the world. Alexander the Great, more like Alexander the Okay. This marked the beginning of the end of Alexander's campaigns and the eventual fall of his dynasty. The burning of the Library of Alexandria.
Oh my God, I know about this, bro.
The burning of the Library of Alexandria was like smashing the world.
Bro, that looks so fire too. Wait, how did it actually look like? Nah, it looks so tough. They had that built so tough, man. Hey, don't worry, I'll find the perp. I'll find the perp eventually.
World's first and biggest hard drive. Just imagine if today someone erased the internet. That's close to what happened when the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. The library wasn't just a building with books, but was a hub of knowledge, culture, and innovation in the ancient world. If you were a scholar back then, you'd have to travel to this library.
So did they not have precautions for this? They had to have some type of precautions, like... Where were the firefighters? Okay, clearly they didn't have firefighters back then, but like, you know, they had to have like water buckets around or something.
To do your college thesis.
They had no guards? Yeah, for real. Where are the guards at?
And philosophy to science and mathematics. But Julius Caesar had a massive oops moment when he pursued Pompey into Egypt and burned the Alexandrian ships blocking his way. The fire spread throughout the city, including the massive library. It wasn't just paper that went up in smoke, but also centuries of human progress. It's losing the works of Shakespeare, Newton, or Einstein all at once.
Einstein? Wait, how recent was this?
But they didn't have the cloud to back up these works. The knowledge lost in the fire could have advanced science, medicine, and technology by centuries. Technology basically got set back hundreds of years because some guy set fire to a few ships. And this is probably one of the reasons.
Nah, if we find that dude, bro, we just gotta nail his skeleton or whatever. And everybody gets to get a punch at him or something. Imagine we got the iPhone instead of like in the 2000s, 1600 or something. You know how advanced we would be in the 2000s? Bro, we already saw how much we advanced in like 60 years or whatever from like the computer being it was invented a long time ago, but y'all get my point. From just technology evolutionizing. We advanced so much ever since like the first video game. We would have been so far gone, it would have been insane.
This is why Caesar got stabbed. Napoleon invading Russia in winter. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French military mastermind, decided in 1812 that Russia needed a little visit from his army, but there was one tiny problem.
See, this that short nigga ego shit. He wasn't thinking, bro.
We're not talking about his height. He planned this grand tour for the winter. Now, winter in Russia is not your typical sweater.
It's crazy how, like, the main thing people make fun of him for is his height, and like this dude was a leader or something. There's probably other leaders that are like similar heights from like years ago, and then we just make fun of Napoleon for his height.
Weather, think of it as a walk-in freezer that's on full blast. Temperatures could go as low as -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Feeling warm would take more than a few layers of fur coats. Napoleon underestimated the sheer scale of Russian winter. Napoleon's troops were not exactly dressed for a Siberian trek. They had the wrong gear, and their horses were underdressed for the cold. Then there's the whole issue of supplies. The Russian strategy involved a brilliant move called scorched earth. As Napoleon's troops advanced, the Russians burned their own villages and crops. This meant Napoleon's army had to trudge through a wasteland with little food or shelter. Imagine driving through a desert for days without any gas stations or convenience stores along the way. Soldiers were freezing, starving, and generally unhappy. A cold and hungry army is not a very effective fighting force, kind of like trying to play a soccer game on a cold winter day with players who didn't eat breakfast. Ultimately, Napoleon's grand
why would you even play soccer on a cold winter day? It doesn't even match.
Invasion turned into a historic blunder because his troops were too busy trying to warm up and find a snack to focus on conquering Europe. Introducing rabbits to Australia. The introduction of rabbits
What? Okay, this is getting weird.
To Australia during the middle of the 1850s resulted from one man who got a bit too bored and thought that people in the land down under needed a hobby, but it turned into an ecological disaster instead of a fun pastime. A guy named Thomas Austin wanted to recreate the thrill of hunting rabbits in his home country of England, so he released 24 rabbits onto his property without knowing that it opened the floodgate that threw Australia's ecosystem into chaos. Rabbits are some of the horniest animals because they reproduce so fast they can form an army of hoppers in a matter of a few months. Those 24 rabbits bred like there was no tomorrow, eventually increasing their numbers to millions of bunnies.
They went from 24 to millions? I aspire to be that much of a gooner. I don't know how they did that, bro. I aspire to be at that level. Dude, my respect for rabbits just went up. I didn't know rabbits was moving like that.
In 5 decades. It's like inviting a few friends into your home for a high school party. In just 1 hour, the entire school population is already partying the night out in your parents' living room. This is a big deal because rabbits are relentless eaters. They munch through grasslands, turning green landscapes brown in a hurry. This overgrazing led to soil erosion and degradation. Some animals even faced extinction because they couldn't compete with the rabbits' appetites. Western Union rejecting the telephone. Imagine you're living in
Niggas rejected the telephone, are you stupid? Wait, how is that even possible? You saw a device that could link to another device, that you could hear another human, and you rejected it? If I learned about this, bro, if I'm in the company or whatever, if I was the boss that learned they rejected it, I would've, bro, the whole company, bro, is getting aired out.
In the middle of the 1800s, when the telegram wasn't just a smartphone app, but was the biggest thing to hit the communications market. Then this guy named Alexander Graham Bell shows up and invents the telephone. He approached Western Union, the guys making big bucks with the telegram, selling his patent for the telephone for $100,000.
Oh my God.
But Western Union laughed at his face, telling him this was just a kid's toy. Western Union rejected the offer, believing the telephone was just a passing fad and would never be practical. They believed that the telegram would always be the gold standard of long-distance communication, like believing that cars would never take over horses as the best means of transportation. A few years later, Western Union saw the telephone taking over the market because people like talking to each other in real time instead of translating signals over a telegram. It became a household.
Are they like, bro, there is no... And Western Union, this is a bank, right? Dude, they have unlimited money. You're a bank. Just print out the money and take it. Oh, man. It's gotta be the most disappointing, like, story I've ever heard in my life.
Old staple that has evolved into the smartphone you have in your pocket. Western Union's refusal to buy Bell's patent meant they missed out on becoming the leader in the burgeoning telephone industry. Instead, that role went to companies like Bell Telephone Company, which grew into telecom giants. Meanwhile, Western Union eventually faded into the background, mostly known today for transferring money that should have been theirs if they had bought the telephone patent. Russia selling Alaska to the US. Let's say you have a vacant patch of land you thought wasn't good for anything because nothing grows there. So you decide to sell it to your neighbors. Years later,
Russia, this is why Russia got beef. They got good old American freedom. They lost Alaska, man. Wait, does Alaska offer much? No, it has oil and stuff.
Your neighbors find buried treasure there, leaving you face-palming for making a huge mistake. That's how Russia probably felt after selling Alaska to the U.S.
Putin, I know your ass is still bitter from that. I mean, you probably weren't born when it happened. Your parents probably weren't born. It had to have been a long time ago. But you're still definitely bitter from that in some type of way.
In the 19th century, it was essentially worthless if you couldn't grow or build anything on your land. So in 1867, Russia thought Alaska was a lost cause because they weren't making enough money from the fur trade there. They also had concerns about defending it from British and American interests. Believing that Alaska was too much of a liability to keep, Russia sold it to America for $7.2 million, which should be around $120 million today.
That is kind of a lot, though, I will say. That is kind of a bag.
They struck gold because the money helped their economy. But they lost a literal gold mine in the long run because they didn't know that Alaska was a treasure chest covered in snow. It was rich in natural resources like gold, oil, and minerals. The oil fields, discovered later, became a major economic boost to the USA. So Russia certainly missed out on potential wealth. Just like how you sold that rare Pokemon card to your friend when you were 10, you got $200 out of it, not knowing it would be worth $100,000 today. Ignoring the Wright brothers. When you want to go on a
They ignored the plane? I mean, at the same, seeing a plane at the time, since they all took ships and boats or whatever, that was probably like crazy. They're like, you're gonna send humans in the air? You're crazy. Even thinking of the concept of a plane, I'd be thinking, they'd be making these... Damn, I'm gonna sound dumb ass in this, but like, how does that weight hold up in the air? Yes, engines I understand, but like, how can the engine and the wings make it hold? Like, I don't know, it's scary. Like, bro, it's like a 50,000 pound, more 2,000 ton, whatever thing. Like, it's just crazy to me that we made something, like humans made something like that can fly in the air and it like won't fall. That's that weight. That's so crazy.
Tropical island vacation, hop on a plane and head straight to Hawaii. You'd be lounging on the beach in a few hours and drinking pina coladas. But that almost didn't happen when people kept ignoring the Wright brothers. During the late 19th century and early 20th century, the Wright brothers told everyone they could make humans fly. Meanwhile, everyone around them rolled their eyes, saying, yeah, right. They had trouble getting people to buy into their dream. Well, it turned out these brothers weren't only dreamers, but were doers. They weren't just tossing paper airplanes around and hoping for the best. Instead, they were developing human history's first powered, controlled, and sustained flight. By 1903, they managed to fly their first plane, instantly changing the...
Crazy thing is, y'all, that's not that long ago. From us going from like wooden, like what was our first plane made out of, like a wood and metal or something like that, to what we have now. It's like 125 years ago maybe or something. And like, look what we developed into now.
World of transportation. So if you were one of the investors who mocked and ignored the Wright brothers, you would have missed a potential gold mine of innovation. But back then, ignoring the possibility of flight was understandable because the air was uncharted territory for humans. People and governments who ignored them missed out on being part of aviation history from the very beginning. And that's like showing up at the party just after the guest of honor left. Bank accounts could have taken flight with the Wright brothers, but instead, people who ignored and ridiculed them were left grounded. The Titanic's lack of lifeboats.
Okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because, like, how are you going to make one of the biggest ships in the world and put, like, a little bit of lifeboats? Titanic, you're not slick, bro. Yo, the Titanic story is so odd to me. Bro, there should have been at least, like, how many lifeboats were on the Titanic? I actually want to search that up. These niggas had 20 lifeboats, bro! 2,209 on board the night it sank? Bro, they gotta be trolling, man. Nah. That is... No, bro. You cannot tell me that was not planned out. You cannot tell me that was not... I don't know how they would have planned it out. They did something, bro. They were trolling.
Ethics over safety can be a recipe for disaster. The guys behind the Titanic learned that the hard way when
they definitely had an ego, because they... What do they say about it? It's the unsinkable ship or something? That is a crazy name. Yo, that's why karma will always be a... Karma's a... You should have known better.
decision that ended up killing more than 1,000 people. The Titanic was built with great pride, and its designers thought it was unsinkable.
Yeah, they had an ego.
They thought the ship was so expensive and well designed that it didn't need enough lifeboats for everyone. They only included enough for about half of the people on board, with the idea that nothing could go wrong. But the reason there weren't enough rafts for everyone was it would obstruct the passenger's view and make the ship less posh. They treated the Titanic as a curated Instagram feed that would look bad if it had enough lifeboats. When the ship is sinking and you're left to swim the icy waters, you have nothing but your life vests, which aren't enough to keep you from dying an icy death. Without enough lifeboats, it's like you're in a burning building with only 2 fire exits, because the architect thought more exits would ruin the
caption said,
design.
"Not even God could
People
sink
are
my
bound
ship."
to die when they're scrambling hard and panicking through the doors, so if the Titanic didn't care so much about aesthetics, Jack and Rose would have lived happily ever after, and we'd have one less Academy Award-winning movie. Hindenburg
At least we got the
hydrogen.
movie.
Getting a ride on the Hindenburg in the 1930s was like getting on the luxury cruise ship
I don't even
of the
know.
skies. You
I've,
were the
I've never heard of this.
A-lister.
I know
If you
the balloon thing or whatever, the air balloon. I forgot what it was called.
got to hitch a ride on
I actually want to ride in one of those. It seems kind of fun.
airship, but hydrogen, the reason why this airship could float higher than birds, was also the reason for one of the biggest disasters of the 20th century.
Oh, it
hydrogen was
crashed?
the popular gas choice for airships like the Hindenburg because it was lighter than air and had more lifting power than many other gases. The only other substitute back then was helium, which was rarer and more expensive. So to maximize profits, you'd prefer
Damn, helium is crazy. Now you could just go to like Party City and get like one of those massive vats of helium for like probably like $50 or something.
hydrogen because it's a lot cheaper. But going cheap also has a price. Unlike helium, hydrogen is highly flammable. A simple spark could light up a hydrogen-powered airship like the night sky on the 4th of July. That's what happened with the Hindenburg when an electrical spark and a gas leak lit the airship and caused a massive explosion that killed a lot of people. It's all because someone opted to use hydrogen instead of helium. Imagine skipping an iPhone to buy a $50 bootleg phone, which could turn into a ticking time bomb when it overheats.
Nice
Those
one,
guys
buddy.
behind the Hindenburg realized the hard way that it's better to play it safe when dealing with something that could explode like a popcorn kernel in a microwave. Failure to prepare Pearl Harbor. It's December
let's go,
7th,
Flame.
1941, and you're in
To
Hawaii,
prepare Pearl Harbor? Wait, so they knew about it? Am I dumb?
where you're supposed to be soaking up the sun. You get a surprise visit from the Japanese Navy, and they're not here for the beach. Instead, they're bombing Pearl Harbor. This surprise attack was like a punch
Imagine somebody was genuinely on vacation that day on that island. It happened. Oh, that'd be the biggest surprise of all time.
in the gut to the US, not just physically, but strategically, because a few bad decisions led to this tragedy. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a major intelligence failure for the US. There were already hints that the Japanese might be up to something while preparing for war. However, the US didn't piece together the clues effectively, not realizing that the most obvious...
See, that's the thing with the United States. I feel like people don't realize, bro. The United States will learn something's going to happen, and they'll let it happen, and then they'll invade like 10 other countries and crash out. Imagine learning somebody in your family or whatever is about to get killed. It happens, and then you just kill the other person's like whole family or something.
target was the population center.
Like, you let it
and
happen,
base
and then you
closest
just
to
kill,
Japan.
like,
it's like seeing a few puzzle
crazy.
pieces, but not realizing they form a big, alarming picture. Pearl Harbor was a key naval base in the Pacific, and being unprepared meant losing a major stronghold. By failing to put up enough defenses on this base, you're basically leaving your front door wide open while you're on vacation. The attack crippled much of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, which was a big blow to American military power in the Pacific theater. So, as cruel as the Japanese were for their surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the casualties were just as much about the U.S.'s decision to leave this tropical paradise vulnerable. China's Great Leap Forward. China's Great Leap
What's
Forward
this?
during the 1950s was a massive economic and social campaign about building huge cities using Lego bricks and millions
Okay.
of people who spent
Lego
their
bricks?
entire lives on farms. It was so ambitious that the only way it would end
Wow,
was
farms
in
raise as much?
disaster. The idea was to quickly transform China from an agricultural country into an industrial powerhouse, almost
Okay.
like trying to turn a bicycle into a Lamborghini overnight. Their first order of business was to take people from private farming communities and bring them to collective farming systems. Meanwhile, steel
Okay.
factories were built on lands formerly occupied by farms. But instead of achieving its goals, China's plan produced poor quality steel and low-yielding crops. Their people weren't trained
Is this why all the Chinese buildings be fragile? Yo, have y'all ever seen videos of like those? There's like massive Chinese skyscrapers, and like they're just so weak they have to explode them, or like nobody lives in them, so they make them, and then they have to. Hold on, let me see if I can find it, bro. It's bro. The first thing I'm recommended is compilation. Chinese skyscraper collapse compilation. Bro, what are their buildings made out of? He might be right, bro. These shits might be made out of Legos. The problem with them, look, they look so corporate, bro. Am I tripping? If I lived in one of these, I would literally be depressed. I would be depressed. Why do they all look the same? Why are they gray? Why is this whole area gray? At least in the United States, like if you check like New York or something, the buildings look different and stuff. Dude, these buildings look creepy. It looks like you took a bunch of like 3D models and just copy and pasted them.
Well enough to operate factories. They didn't even have much incentive to work in collective farms because they were getting paid the same wage even if they did nothing but lounge around all day. This led to widespread food shortages and famine because the country halted its time-tested food production system to try to build industrial products. And you probably already know you can't eat steel. When the industrial strategy didn't work, China said, "Oh, okay, my bad. I'll give you your farming land back." The country steadily recovered from that disaster, but not before around 20 million people died of starvation.
Damn!
The Great Leap Forward is undoubtedly a grand scheme that was poorly executed, like setting off on a cross-country trip without a map, a GPS, or a driver's license.
But now it's a little bit better because they have like buildings and like massive, I mean, the economy is crazy.
Kodak ignoring digital cameras, 1975. Imagine being the guy
that's a major fumble. 1975, that's not long ago at all.
Who invented laser guns, but you decided to keep it off the market because it would affect your bullet sales. That's similar to what happened to Kodak when it ignored the digital camera. Kodak was actually the first to invent the digital camera in 1975, but the guys behind the company hesitated, thinking, why fix what isn't broken? Of course, corporate greed also overcame them. The film was Kodak's bread and butter, so if they had capitalized on their invention, the digital camera would have cannibalized their profitable film business because no one would be buying film cameras anymore. They were even buying patents left and right to ensure digital photography never made it into the market.
Oh, they were haters. I've never heard of them buying I've never heard of that. Buying a patent so another company doesn't move forward? How the do you even do that? Yo, there's gotta be some form of illegal.
Unknown to Kodak, the digital camera industry started booming in the 90s and 2000s when companies like Sony, Canon, and Nikon entered the market and innovated at a pace Kodak couldn't keep up with. Once the king of the camera industry, Kodak thought nostalgia was powerful enough to convince people to buy film cameras. Spoiler alert, it didn't.
I mean, people still be buying film cameras or like for nostalgia or whatever that effect. Like, I always see people like hang up the picture. I don't know what they're called, bro. They'll take the picture and then hang it up.
If you lived in the early 2000s, you'd realize you wanted convenience and instant gratification instead of waiting days to see what you looked like in the photo. Digital cameras offered that by eliminating developing time and allowing you to see your photo instantly, leading to endless retakes because you wanted to get the perfect angle that didn't make you look fat. Meanwhile, Kodak was stuck in the Stone Age because of the company's lack of vision. That sounds ironic for a company that sold cameras. Decca Records rejecting the Beatles. You know the Beatles as
generational fumble. It can't get worse than this. It's just getting worse and worse, bro. These fumbles are getting worse and worse. Decca Records sounds like they decked out on missing the. I don't know where I was going with that.
as one of the greatest music groups of all time, but Decca Records saw things differently in the 1960s when they thought there was nothing special about these talented singers. During their audition with Decca, the company's executives quickly told them they weren't interested. Apparently, they thought that the Beatles had no future because, in their own words, guitar groups were on the way out. That wasn't exactly the case because different guitar groups...
Why do they think that? People always love a nice guitar, bro. Guitar is never gonna die out. Guitar, violin, classic instruments, why would that ever die out?
Continued dominating the music scene until today. As for the Beatles...
I don't know about it until today. Yo, name 5 Beatles songs. Look, I get it. They're the most sold band or whatever. Stop. Let's be serious, man. Let's be serious. The Beatles peaked in like the 70s or 80s or wherever.
They went on to prove that Decca Records made the biggest blunder in the music industry's history. Of course, you can't blame Decca back then because the Beatles were still young and had yet to hit their stride. They were just starting as a simple group playing in bars all over England. But they missed that these guys had charisma and catchy tunes that you'd be looking for if you lived in the groovy 60s
this album
and
cover
70s.
is so hard.
By 1963, the Beatles were selling out tickets worldwide. Today's pop stars would look like bar gigs compared to how crazy people were about this music group. Meanwhile, Decca was left looking like the kid no one wanted to play with after passing on one of the most influential music groups of all time. Just like how
I'm not gonna lie, that regret is literally the type of shit that'll make you goddamn suicidal. Like that type of regret is something you never forget, or like you'll just never forget it.
Decca passed on the Beatles. It would be a huge mistake if you didn't subscribe to our channel, and while you're at it, you might want to join our Discord as well. Coca-Cola's new Coke. Coca-Cola found a way to shoot themselves in the foot just when they were winning the height of the cola wars against Pepsi during the 1980s. They thought
Cola wars? Bro, this was the downfall. This is why everybody ended up fat. They had the cola wars. This one niggas started to hate drinking water and stuff.
They were about to hit their special finishing move on Pepsi by releasing the new Coke. Instead, it turned out to be a fizztastic mistake. The company underestimated how attached their loyal followers were to the original Coke taste. They discovered that people loved them.
Oh, he's so attached, he's just deciding to fuck it, I guess.
Not for their brand, but for the taste of their cola. A sip of that classic Coke taste gives
what do we got going here? Why is this dude holding the back? And this dude is, oh man. This is an interesting, drawn-out scenario. It could not have been drawn out any other way.
Sense of nostalgia and tradition. So when the new Coke hit the shelves, fans erupted like a soda can that's been shaken hard. They were furious, turning their back on this new product and allowing Pepsi to gain ground in the cola wars. The backlash was so intense that Coca-Cola had to scramble to return the original recipe, which they rebranded as Coca-Cola Classic. Their decision to try to rebrand their product not only embarrassed...
I want to try the rebrand. What if it was just good and everybody was just mad about nostalgia? Because one thing niggas will crash out over, nostalgia, bro. Is there nostalgia over something like that, bro? And when they end up getting the thing that's nostalgic, they end up being like, everything's the same. People always do that.
Coca-Cola, but also taught a valuable lesson. Don't mess with people's beloved classics without considering their emotional attachment. Apple firing Steve Jobs. You know that iPhones are the most popular mobile devices today. But
wait, didn't he found Apple? How did he get fired? You can get fired from a company you make?
that almost didn't happen because at one point, Apple thought it was big enough to fire its CEO, Steve Jobs. Think of it this way, Apple in the early 80s is like a high school football team with a flashy quarterback who's always in trouble but has a knack for scoring touchdowns. That quarterback is Steve Jobs. He was the leader that the company needed, even though there were times when he didn't see eye to eye with everyone on the team. But after some big clashes with the board, Jobs got booted out of Apple. Suddenly, Jobs lost his job. Soon after, Apple lost some ground in the computer race, becoming a forgotten company during the 90s and the early 2000s.
Steve Jobs, man.
The company was like a ship without a captain because it didn't have a direction or an identity. They missed Jobs' quirkiness and innovative thinking. Apple mended its relationship with Jobs by buying his new company, telling him they couldn't do anything without him. It was like your ex begging you to return because
that's crazy glaze, bro. I know he felt good about that too.
Because they miss you. So when Jobs returned in 1997, Apple steadily climbed through the tech world with his wave of creativity. New products like the iMac, iPod, and iPhone became the new norm in the next 30 years. That almost didn't happen after Apple fired Jobs out of pettiness and if they didn't bring him back. Thankfully, the company was willing enough to swallow its pride. NASA's Challenger launch. You were back in 1986.
Oh, this is the man. The thing is about me for space rockets or whatever, all these rockets that go up, like, don't they test them so much? Like, they get government money. How do they be testing them so much and they end up crashing still?
When NASA was set to make waves throughout the galaxy once again. The Space Shuttle Challenger was scheduled for launch, and it was a big deal because it was supposed to bring high-profile payloads into space, including a teacher who was about to be the first civilian in space.
Oh, wow.
But before you get all excited, it wasn't a happy ending because of a series of bad decisions. The day before the launch was super cold, colder than a polar bear's nose on a winter morning. There was a problem because the launch team worried about the O-rings, like the gaskets that keep the rocket's segments sealed tightly. In such chilly weather, these O-rings were more likely to lose flexibility. Think of it like trying to chew a piece of gum left in the freezer. You'd realize that it's not exactly stretchy. Some engineers at Morton Thiokol, the contractor responsible for the solid rocket boosters, raised alarms about these O-rings, but their concerns were kind of brushed off. The decision makers at NASA, under a lot of pressure to stick to the launch schedule and with a bit of,
Dude, that's scary, bro. That's scary. That could be for anything you do, like even a plane or something. Imagine a plane that's on time. They're like, we don't want to upset the passengers by delaying it. You know what? We just gotta go through, and then the plane just crashes.
We've done this
Boeing,
before.
that's literally Boeing. I'm not gonna lie, that is literally Boeing. that is a perfect representation. They just want to keep the company going, so they keep making planes, and they don't make them better.
Confidence, decided to go ahead with it. As you might have guessed, the worst case scenario happened. About 73 seconds after liftoff, the O-rings failed, leading to a catastrophic explosion. All 7 crew members on board lost their lives. It was a heart-wrenching moment that shook NASA and the world, and it was all because NASA prioritized its schedule over safety. Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait. Imagine you're at a big family gathering and suddenly decide to grab your cousin's dessert because you're feeling a bit greedy. Not only does this make everyone uncomfortable, but it also leads to some serious family drama, which forces everyone in the family to kick you out of the house. So, a little greed backfired on you. That's pretty much what happened when Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq at the time, decided to invade Kuwait. Saddam's logic was that Kuwait was part of Iraq and that it was stealing oil from Iraqi fields. However, the international community saw this move as a blatant aggression. Nations worldwide were not thrilled about one country just strolling into another to steal some oil. It's like your neighbor casually connects his
and nowadays, every country is fighting for oil with each other.
to your home to steal your electricity because he feels like doing it. Kuwait was an important oil producer, and the invasion disrupted global oil markets. Oil prices shot up, causing economic strain worldwide. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience, but was like throwing a wrench into the gears of the global economy. The invasion prompted a swift and powerful response from the Avengers of different countries, with America leading the charge. These coalition forces launched a massive counterattack that pushed Iraqi forces out of Kuwait.
Yeah, they got some good old-fashioned freedom. Bro, it's crazy how every country will call on America when they need something. It's like they're crying in the corner like, America, save us.
In just a few months. This military failure left Iraq in shambles and contributed to years of ongoing conflict and instability. Iraq was hit with a series of sanctions that crippled its economy and severely impacted.
Damn, I feel bad though. I mean, it kind of sucks with countries like this where they have a terrible leader for a minute, and then the whole country has to suffer because they have a terrible leader. Like, and there's kind of nothing you could do about it.
The Iraqi people. It was like making a mess in your neighbor's yard and then being grounded for weeks. It also led to a huge war with the US during the 2000s, eventually ending with Saddam's death. The decision to invade Kuwait backfired in Saddam's face in the worst way possible, and it's all because he wanted a share of that oil money. Publishers turning down the Harry Potter manuscript. Imagine being a publishing company that said that a book about kids going to a school of magic wouldn't appeal.
That does sound like a pretty goofy. I'm not gonna lie, Harry Potter is a plot. I would probably hear that and probably laugh. Like back then, I'd be like, what, a magic school? Yeah, get out of here. But I would say that now because it's already been done so much. Like, I would say, I'll be like, nah, that's already done too much.
Top readers. Fumble. That's probably what happened when multiple publishers turned down J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript. Before the success of the Potterverse, Rowling was an upstart author looking to find her place in the fiction industry. But after completing her original manuscript, she got rejected by no less than 12 publishers because the Harry Potter storyline was too conventional, too long, too weird, or too old-fashioned. When a smaller publisher called Bloomsbury accepted Harry Potter, the book series quickly became a hit. The books didn't just succeed, but soared high, as if someone casted Wingardium Leviosa.
That does seem pretty long as a kid's book. Well, did any of y'all read Harry Potter as like a kid? I feel like most of us watched the movie, if anything. Like most of us watched the movie. Right? Like, we were watching the movies, we weren't reading the shit. But back then, you know, whenever first release, kids was actually still reading books. So, yeah, no, too long. I read the first one. Yeah, I couldn't read something like Harry Potter nowadays, I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't read something. But back then, bro, it was probably mad interesting. Like, you could create the whole world in your imagination.
On it. Rejecting Harry Potter was a giant missed jackpot. The series has sold over 500 million copies, translated into 80 languages, and turned into blockbuster movies. Each book deal, movie adaptation, and spin-off would have meant more cash flow than a Gringotts vault. But it's not just about money. The cultural impact of Harry Potter is colossal. It inspired a generation to read. That first Harry Potter book you read might have also been why you started reading other books. So if you were a publisher
reading. Funny joke. I like you, man.
Sure that passed on this, you're not just missing out on dollars, but also a legacy. Or maybe
reading is actually good. I gotta read more. Come on. But yeah, my eyeballs are the equivalent of reading, and I will watch the movie. That's basically the equivalent of me reading the book.
Were like Voldemort, hating on Harry Potter instead of trying to get along with him. Blockbuster declining to buy Netflix.
Oh my god. Oh, this is the sickest story ever. I hate hearing about this. It's the way they were leading, like, the film industry or whatever back then. Like, every store was there. I never even went to one or whatever because it's pretty much dead right when I was younger. But, oh, it's just terrible.
It's the early 2000s, and Blockbuster is dominating the movie rentals industry. They've got stores popping up everywhere like popcorn at a movie theater because the best way to watch movies without going to the cinema was renting VHS tapes, VCDs.
Now, who remembers Redbox? Real shit. I remember that, bro. I remember when I was younger, I would go with my uncle. We go to the Redbox, get a little movie disc or whatever, watch it on the living room TV. We had to return it. Yeah, so I mean, I did actually know about renting movies like that. I didn't grow up with like streaming services.
And DVDs. Here comes
Who remembers Gamefly? Now, real niggas remember Gamefly. I was too broke for Gamefly, but real ones remember Gamefly.
Netflix, a company offering DVDs by mail, it was a startup with little to offer except its online presence as a company that wanted to cash in on the dot-com boom. Netflix gave Blockbuster a chance to buy it for $50 million so that the bigger company could absorb Netflix's online ordering system. That way, people could rent their DVDs without leaving their homes and stepping into a Blockbuster store. But Blockbuster said, nah, we're doing just fine. And they rejected Netflix because it was going to eliminate late fees, which was Blockbuster's cash cow. However, Netflix invested in technology and customer experience. Meanwhile, Blockbuster held on to their traditional ways. Imagine Netflix riding a car while Blockbuster was still relying on horses. So by the time the 2010s came and people were looking for more convenient ways to watch movies, Netflix stepped in as the innovator of the streaming service industry. On the other hand, let's just say that the DVDs at Blockbuster were collecting dust. They declined because they didn't adapt to new trends and tech, believing that the old ways still work. From thousands of stores worldwide, Blockbuster's numbers were reduced to one last store standing. On the other hand, everyone's been sharing Netflix passwords everywhere in the world. Yahoo not buying Google. During the late 90s,
oh my, this actually might be the worst thing I've ever heard. Oh, this is the worst. This is easily the worst one. I'm not even, this is actually about to make me cry. Bro, Google owns the world. Google owns everything now. What does Yahoo own? Nothing. Nobody even uses Yahoo. Oh, that is just terrible. Now they're empowered by Google. Hold on, let me search up anything. Tommy NFG. Is it still? No, they still have their search engine or whatever. Okay, who made this? What the hell is this? Yeah, Yahoo search engine, count your days. Count your days, bro.
And early 2000s, you'd be typing Yahoo instead of Google on your web browser because Yahoo was still the king of internet search engines.
Glad to say I never went on Yahoo
like the
ever
cool kid in school,
younger.
And Google is just the new kid starting to make waves with its super efficient search engine. Yahoo had the chance to buy Google in 1998 for a mere $1 million, but they passed on it because they thought that it was too expensive to buy a company that did the exact same thing they did. However, the decision turned out to be the worst mistake in Yahoo's existence because
that wasn't even a lot with inflation. Bro, it's probably like 2 or 3 mil now. Like, bro.
Redefined the search engine industry by making searches easier and less of a hassle. Yahoo, on the other hand, was kind of stuck in the old school directory model, which was like trying to find a needle in a haystack with a magnifying glass. By turning down Google, Yahoo missed out on tapping into a tech powerhouse that was all set to dominate the search engine world. Fast forward to today, and Google's search engine is the giant running the show in the tech industry. It's so powerful that you probably can't live without Google, especially after—
Nah, deadass, bro. Google Chrome has everything for you. Bro, does anybody here use something other than like Google Chrome as their main browser? I use Opera, to be honest. Opera's cool, but I only use it for stream. Y'all are not using Microsoft Edge. Stop lying. Holy shit, what's up with the liars today? Y'all are not using Microsoft Edge.
The company expanded into Android and YouTube. On the other hand, Yahoo turned down the golden ticket to tech supremacy when it didn't buy Google. Yahoo could have been a cool kid with a sidekick, but instead it was left watching from the sidelines as Google took the spotlight.
It got cucked.
Oh, how the tables have turned. Lehman Brothers.
Hold up, I want to search up Google. Go ahead and search up Google's net worth. I wonder if they missed out.
Brothers ignoring subprime mortgage risks. Lehman Brothers ignoring subprime mortgage
I don't even know what this means.
Risks was like ignoring a leak in a boat, thinking it's just a little water, until it sinks the entire ship. That mistake destroyed the entire world economy during the late 2000s. Lehman Brothers—
Oh, was this the housing crash?
one of the biggest investment banks in the world, but they decided to dive headfirst into the subprime mortgage market in the early 2000s. Subprime mortgages are home loans given to people with poor credit histories, which means there's a higher chance these borrowers might be unable to repay them. And like betting on a three-legged horse to win the Kentucky Derby, Lehman bet big on these risky loans. At first, it seemed like a genius move. The housing market was booming, and everyone thought home prices would keep going up forever. So Lehman kept buying these risky loans and packaging them into securities, which they then sold to investors for hefty profits. It was all good times and high fives until the housing bubble burst in 2007.
Dude, Dennis
the value
times?
of homes plummeted, and many of those subprime borrowers couldn't make their mortgage payment.
Bro, this is when I should have bought a home instead of being 4 years old. I'm actually very upset. I'm very upset I didn't buy a home at this time. I should have been on my hustling shit.
This meant the securities Lehman had been selling were now worth way less than expected. The financial world suddenly realized it was sitting on a mountain of bad debt, and panic set in. Lehman Brothers, who had invested so heavily in toxic assets that their portfolio looked like a dumpster fire, found themselves in a problem. They'd gambled everything on a market falling faster than a skydiver without a parachute. With debts stacking up, they filed for bankruptcy in 2008, setting the stage for one of the biggest global financial meltdowns ever.
Same, I could have done so much
ignoring
more.
Android. The hardest substance in the universe is the Nokia 3310, and the guys at Nokia thought that they could bank on this phone's ruggedness for decades. But the smartphone revolution jump-started the end of everything for this cell phone giant. Smartphones started taking off during the 2010s, after Apple released the iPhone. Soon after, the Android operating system started making waves with Google backing it up. If your phone wasn't an iPhone running iOS, it was certainly running Android. Except, of course, if you owned a Nokia. Unlike other companies like Samsung, Nokia ignored Android, banking on their Symbian OS. So when Android...
What is Symbian? Anybody got a Symbian phone? Hey, who knows, bro? Maybe it's good. Maybe it's good.
It started taking off, it challenged iOS for the throne of best smartphone OS because people loved its open source nature and growing app ecosystem. On the other hand, Nokia moved on to Windows instead of Android after Symbian failed. The problem was that Nokia's phones were not as customized.
They made a Windows phone? Damn, they went 0 for 2. They went 0 for 2. You created one shitty phone, and then you created another one. I don't know how that's possible.
As Android running phones, you'd be stuck with a user interface that lacks the wow factor and a good app library. This was a major drawback because, as you know, apps are like the icing on the smartphone cake. Nokia's choice of Windows Phone was like bringing a knife to a smartphone fight. While Androids had a buffet of apps, Nokia was stuck with a 3310, perfect for calling, but hopeless at selfies.
W video, man. And listen, bro, you just gotta hear me out. Your biggest regret is not investing in a Tommy and a G sub. Just hear me out for a second, all right? Hear me out for a second. You heard about all these regrets, y'all. All right, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch right now. Imagine investing early right now when I become the biggest person on Twitch, YouTube, everything. You'll be the one person that missed out on it, and that'll be sad. And everybody here did miss out on it. Most people did. A lot of people here aren't sub. They could sub. Don't miss out on it, all right? Okay, and yeah, if you're watching the tube, make sure to join the Discord, watch the streams.
Subscribe to Tommy and FG.